You don't need to raise your voice to be heard. True strength isn't in shouting, it's in silence. The strongest men don't announce their power. They move in stillness. They let their actions speak louder than their words. Waking up early won't magically transform your life. It's not about the time on the clock, it's about the purpose behind it. Why do you rise before the world wakes? Why do you step into the day before anyone else? It's not discipline alone that drives change, but the meaning behind your actions. The Stoics knew this well. They didn't train their minds with noise, with chaos, or with empty motivation. They found their strength in stillness, in focus, in mastering the unseen battles of the mind. Here are 10 powerful ways the Stoics sharpened their minds, not with words, but with action. Not in distraction, but in deep, unwavering stillness. 1. It's not about what time you wake up. It's about why you wake up. Listen, a real man isn't measured by what time his alarm goes off. He's measured by why he gets out of bed. You can wake up at 4 a.m. and still lose the day if the first thing you do is scroll through your phone. You can wake up at 7 and still dominate your life if you rise with purpose, with unshakable intent. Waking up early isn't the key. Waking up with a reason is. You need a why big enough to crush laziness, clear enough to destroy hesitation, and deep enough to move you into action, even when no one's watching. Remember this. Every morning you rise, you're making a silent declaration about the man you are. Do you rise like a warrior, or roll over like someone hiding from life? Do you wake to create something, or just to react to everything thrown your way? Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, Stoic, once wrote in his morning journal, "So you were born to lie in bed, when the world expects you to act like a man?" That question echoes through the centuries, and it still hits hard today. If you wake up not knowing why you're waking up, you're not really living. You're just repeating, reacting, floating. Freedom doesn't start with breaking systems. It starts with mastering yourself. And self-mastery begins in the morning. When the alarm rings, that's not just a signal for the start of your day. It's the bell that challenges your character. Will you hit snooze, or will you rise? When you get up, in silence, and walk toward your responsibilities, you're training your willpower. You don't need motivation. You need a reason. A vision of the man you're building. Don't have that reason yet? Create it. Right now. Write down your mission. Think about the people depending on you. Picture the face of someone you'd do anything for. Imagine the man you could become if you stop running from yourself. Waking up early won't make you great. But the reason behind it? That could change everything. Let your mornings be a ritual of rebirth. Not because it's a new day, but because you're choosing to become a new version of you. Stronger, clearer, more dangerous, unshakable. And remember, nobody sees you in that moment. And that's exactly why it matters most. The greatest victory isn't over others. It's over yourself. And it starts the moment your eyes open. 2. The man who owns his morning owns his life. And once you understand that why you wake up matters more than when, here's the next truth. The man who owns his morning owns his life. This isn't motivational fluff. It's ancient wisdom, tested, practiced, and proven by warriors, philosophers, and kings. The Stoics believed that if you can master the small habits, you will command your destiny. So let me ask you, who controls your first hour of the day? Because whoever owns your morning owns you. If the first thing you do is grab your phone, check emails, scroll through noise, then the world owns you. The world decides your mood, your focus, your direction. But if you choose instead to start with stillness, clarity, and purpose, you are in command. You lead your mind. You set your tone. You drive your day. This isn't just about routines. This is about territory. Your morning is sacred ground, and the question is, who claims it? A Stoic man doesn't let life happen to him. He designs his day like a craftsman with a blade. Precise. Intentional. Focused. The reason why the morning is so powerful isn't because it's quiet, it's because it's clean. Untouched. Unclaimed. It's a blank canvas. And what you do in that space writes the story of your entire day. Here's what separates men who win from men who wish. The winners don't leave their mindset to chance. They train it first thing in the morning. Not for social media. Not to look productive. But because they understand that every battle is first won inside. You may not control every outcome in your day, but you can control how it begins. You can choose discipline over comfort, silence over noise, clarity over chaos. You can look yourself in the mirror at 6 a.m. and know you showed up for yourself. Not because someone told you to, but because you're a man with a mission. Because you no longer let life push you around like a passenger. No, now you drive. Every minute you own in the morning is a weapon. It's an edge. And when others are still lost in distraction, in anxiety, in sleep, you've already won the first fight. This is the true meaning of power. To lead yourself when no one's watching. To keep your word to yourself when no one's clapping. To rise before the chaos and walk into the day like a storm with purpose. Because if you don't own your morning, someone else will. And they'll rent your mind for free. So reclaim your territory. Protect that first hour like your life depends on it, because it does. The version of you that conquers. That builds. That commands respect. He is forged in the early hours, while the world still sleeps. And no, it's not easy. But it's simple. Own your morning. Win the day. Do it in silence. Let your results make the noise. 3. Your first action every morning is a silent declaration of who you are. If owning your morning gives you power, then what you choose to do in those first 5 minutes reveals who you truly are. Not to the world. Not to social media. But to yourself. Because the first action you take each day is not just a habit, it's a silent declaration of your identity. It's you telling yourself and the universe, this is who I am. This is what I stand for. This is how I show up. Let's be brutally honest. When your alarm goes off and the first thing you reach for is your phone, you're not just checking messages. You're surrendering. You're choosing noise over clarity. Reaction over intention. You're giving away your focus, your energy, your fire, before you even leave the bed. And it happens so fast, you don't even feel it. But over time, it adds up. Those few seconds become chains. Invisible chains. Chains that slowly pull you away from the man you were meant to be. Because real discipline doesn't start in the gym. It doesn't start with a checklist or a planner. It starts in the silence, when no one is looking, and you have to choose between comfort and control. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology caught up. They understood that the true battlefield is internal. That every morning, your first action is like a vote. You're casting a ballot for the kind of man you're becoming. And the question is, are you voting for strength, presence, purpose? Or are you voting for distraction, delay, avoidance? Picture this. 2 men wake up at the same time. One grabs his phone, drowns in other people's opinions, rushes into the day with a cluttered mind. The other sits up in silence. He breathes. He writes. He sets his intentions. No noise. No rush. Just clarity. Now fast forward 10 years. They are living 2 different lives. Not because of luck, but because of a few invisible choices repeated daily in the dark. That's what makes it powerful. Not the complexity. Not the intensity. But the consistency. The ability to make a small, conscious choice when no one's around to applaud you. That is the definition of self-respect. That is how you become unshakable. You don't need to do more. You don't need to hustle harder. You just need to choose better at the very start. So tomorrow, when you open your eyes, ask yourself one question. What am I about to declare to the world with this first action? Is it discipline? Is it presence? Is it control? Or is it surrender? The choice will be yours. And no one will know, but you will. And that knowing will shape everything else. Because the man who controls his first move will eventually control his entire life. 4. The morning is the last quiet place where your inner power can be trained. If your first action is a silent declaration of who you are, then what follows next is even more important: how you choose to fill the silence. Because here's a truth that most men overlook in a world of nonstop stimulation, distraction, and pressure. The early morning is the last untouched space where your inner power can be trained. Before the emails, before the demands, before the noise floods in, there is a sacred window, short, unguarded, and pure. That is your territory, your temple. And if you waste it, you're not just wasting time, you're giving up the most powerful training ground you have. You see, discipline isn't built when people are watching. Confidence isn't gained through applause. Clarity doesn't come from chaos. All of it, the real stuff, the foundation of unshakable men, is built in silence. The Stoics called this practice preparation of the soul. Marcus Aurelius didn't write in his journal each morning to document his day. He wrote to sharpen his moral compass, to strengthen his thoughts before the world tested him. He trained in peace so he could stand firm in war. Now look at your mornings. Are they sacred or are they surrendered? Do you spend them reflecting, resetting, preparing? Or do you hand them over to distraction before your feet touch the floor? Most men don't lose the day at noon. They lose it in the first hour, when they choose noise instead of stillness, reaction instead of reflection, comfort instead of clarity. Because here's the paradox. The world tells you to move faster. But the men who dominate their lives slow down. They pause. They breathe. They think. Not for long, but just long enough to remember who they are and who they're becoming. This is not weakness. This is elite preparation. This is self-command. This is how the inner citadel is fortified, one quiet morning at a time. You don't need a perfect routine. You don't need 10 different productivity hacks. You need one space in your day where you are completely present, focused, and intentional. And that space, that clean, silent, beautiful void, is waiting for you every morning. No one will fight to protect it for you. The world will try to steal it. People will rush into it. Technology will claw at it. But if you defend it, if you guard it like a warrior defends the gate, you'll step into your day with a calm fire most men will never understand. And that's the secret. Real strength doesn't start loud. It starts quiet. It starts in the moments where nothing is happening, and you are fully awake to everything. So tomorrow, before you check your phone, before you start sprinting, before the chaos wins, return to that silence. Even if it's just for 5 minutes. Sit with your thoughts. Write your principles. Breathe. Stand still in the storm of your own mind. Because in that space, you are no longer a reactor. You are a creator. And the man who creates his inner world each morning will never be ruled by the outer one. 5. The longer you delay your morning, the longer you delay your life. If the morning is your final fortress of stillness, then every time you ignore it, you're not just skipping a moment of peace. You're postponing the man you're meant to become. Let that sink in. Every time you hit snooze, you're not just delaying a sound, you're delaying your growth. Every time you scroll instead of reflect, you're not just wasting seconds, you're surrendering your future. Every time you choose later, what you're really saying is, I'll live fully, someday. But someday doesn't exist. And the men who wait for perfect moments, perfect moods, perfect energy, they never start. And because they never start, they never transform. Let's be clear, no one's coming to wake you up for real. Not your boss. Not your coach. Not even life itself. Because waking up early isn't about a clock, it's about a commitment. A decision. To stop delaying the life you know you could be living. This is where the Stoic mindset separates the boys from the men. Stoic men don't wake up based on emotion. They don't wait until they feel like it. They rise out of duty, not dopamine. They move, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Because once you delay the beginning of your day, it becomes easier to delay everything else. You delay the workout. You delay the hard conversation. You delay the book you were supposed to write, the plan you said you'd start, the version of you that's screaming to break through. And here's the brutal truth. The habit of delay becomes your character. It becomes your legacy. Until one day, you wake up and realize you become someone who only ever meant to. But you don't have to go down that road. You can choose something else. Not tomorrow. Not next month. Now. Because every morning is a test, and your body knows it. Your mind resists it. And your spirit is waiting to see what you'll do. You can either build momentum or excuses. But you can't have both. So the next time the alarm goes off and the warm comfort of delay calls to you, ask yourself, what am I really delaying? Is it just 5 more minutes of sleep? Or is it 5 more years of wasted potential? Because those tiny decisions stack. And soon enough, you're not just hitting snooze on your alarm. You're hitting snooze on your mission. That's why the men who lead, the men who win, the men who walk with calm authority. They rise early not for productivity, but for practice. They wake to face themselves. They wake to lead their mind before it's hijacked by the world. They wake to remember who the hell they are before the noise tries to make them forget. So stop waiting. The clock isn't your enemy, your hesitation is. Break it. Wake with purpose. Move with fire. Stand like a man who knows his time is limited and acts accordingly. Because the longer you delay your morning, the longer you delay your life. And if you won't claim it now, when will you? 6. True discipline doesn't happen in front of an audience. It happens in the quiet when no one is watching. And if delaying your morning means delaying your mission, then here's the next truth that hits even harder. The real test of discipline isn't what you do when people are watching. It's what you do when no one sees. That's where your character is forged. Anyone can push hard when the cameras are on, when there's applause, when others are nodding in approval. But what about those invisible moments? When it's dark. When it's quiet. When there's no reward in sight, and the only one who knows what you're doing is you? That's where true power is built. In the silence. In the decision to do what needs to be done, not for validation, but because you gave your word to yourself. You see, discipline isn't about motivation. It's not about hype. It's about self-respect. It's the ability to keep your own promises, even when the world gives you every excuse not to. 5 minutes of stillness when everyone else is sleeping. Waking up without hitting snooze, even when your body begs for comfort. Journaling in silence, reading one paragraph that sharpens your mind, breathing through resistance without posting about it. These are the moments that make men. Not grand gestures. Not inspirational quotes. But simple, quiet, consistent action done in the shadows. Stoic men knew this. They didn't train for applause. They trained to hold the line when no one else would. Because let's be honest, there will be mornings when no one believes in you. There will be days when no one notices your effort. There will be weeks where progress feels invisible. But if you can stand firm in those moments, if you can do what needs to be done without needing a witness, then you are dangerous. You are no longer moved by public opinion. You are no longer addicted to recognition. You are anchored. And that kind of man is unstoppable. Discipline is not a performance. It's a pact. between who you are and who you're becoming. It's forged when you choose to rise without applause. It's strengthened every time you act without attention. It's confirmed when you keep showing up long after the world has stopped clapping. Because here's the paradox. When you do it only for others, it eventually fades. But when you do it only for yourself, it lasts. So tomorrow morning, when the room is still dark and no one's checking in, that's your moment. To prove to yourself that you don't need an audience. You don't need noise. You don't need permission. You only need a reason. A why. And the willingness to move. The world may never applaud you for what you do in the quiet. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Because the man who disciplines himself when no one is watching will never be ruled by anyone else. 7. A morning rooted in presence is worth more than a day lost in chaos. And if true discipline begins in silence, away from the applause, then the next step is learning how to step into that silence with presence, not panic. Because most men wake up and immediately rush. They sprint into the day before they've even taken a breath. They're reacting before they're grounded. They're moving before they're thinking. And then they wonder why everything feels so off, so heavy, so chaotic. Here's the truth. A mind that starts the day in disorder carries that disorder into everything it touches. Seneca said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." But most men are setting sail every morning without ever deciding where they're going. They wake up, reach for their phones, and let the world tell them what matters. They let notifications, emails, headlines, and algorithms dictate the shape of their day, and eventually, the shape of their lives. But not you. Not if you're serious about transformation. Because the man who lives deliberately starts deliberately. He wakes, and instead of rushing, he reclaims. He breathes. He listens inwardly. He creates space between stimulus and response. And in that space, he becomes powerful. Because when you start your day with presence, you set a tone. Not a frantic tone, but a focused one. Not scattered energy, but anchored clarity. This isn't about doing more. It's about being more grounded, more aware, more intentional. You can accomplish 10 tasks with a restless mind and still feel empty. But you can sit for 10 quiet minutes in full presence and realign your entire life. Presence is not passive. It is not slow. It is not weak. It is control. It is strength. It is the only place where your power actually lives, the present moment. So give yourself permission to slow down, not to retreat, but to recalibrate. Breathe before you build. Center yourself before you charge forward. Because no amount of hustle can replace a man who moves with clarity. And no schedule is more important than your state of mind. You were not designed to wake up and be a servant to urgency. You were built to lead yourself. But leadership begins with awareness. And awareness begins in the quiet. 5 minutes. That's all it takes. 5 minutes to disconnect from the noise. To sit in the stillness. To ask yourself what matters most today, and what doesn't. To choose your response to life, instead of being dragged by it. It may seem small. It may seem unnecessary. But the Stoics understood this. To live well, you must first think well. And to think well, you must first be still. Stillness is not inactivity. It's the sharpening of the blade before the strike. It's the breath before the battle. It's the centering of the soul before engaging with the world. So tomorrow, don't just rise. Return. Return to yourself. Return to clarity. Return to the only place where real change begins, the present moment. Because a morning rooted in presence is worth far more than a day lost in chaos. 8. The Stoic man doesn't wait for motivation. He moves because it's his duty. So if clarity is the anchor that centers your morning, then action is the fire that drives it forward. But here's the problem most men face. They wait. They wait for energy. They wait for inspiration. They wait for motivation to arrive like some divine spark that will finally push them into movement. But it doesn't come. Or when it does, it vanishes just as quickly. Because motivation is a mood, and moods are liars. You feel ready now. An hour later, you're back in hesitation. A day later, you're back in excuses. So what separates the Stoic man from the average one? He doesn't wait for the mood to strike. He moves because it's his duty. He understands that action is not a reaction to emotion, it's a decision rooted in values, in principles, in commitment. And that decision gets made every single morning, whether he feels like it or not. The Stoic man rises, not because it's easy, not because it's fun, not because he's feeling it, but because his mission demands it, because his future self expects it, because he's already seen the consequences of inaction, and he refuses to return there. This is the moment where boys stay in bed, and men rise. Not because their alarm woke them up, but because their standards did. And that's the thing about discipline. You can't outsource it. You can't fake it. You either act in alignment with who you say you are, or you don't. So the next time you hear that voice in your head whisper, "I'll do it later. I'm tired. I'm not in the mood," remind yourself, you're not here to obey your moods. You're here to obey your mission. You're here to prove to yourself that your word holds weight, that your promises mean something, that you are capable of following through, not just when it's convenient, but especially when it's not. Because every day you delay action, you reinforce hesitation. And every day you move despite resistance, you become more powerful, more solid, more forged. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up excited. He woke up because he had a role to play. Because the world doesn't care if you're in the mood. The world responds to what you do. And once you realize this, that doing the work is more sacred than waiting for the spark, you become unstoppable. You strip away the identity of the man who hopes, and step into the identity of the man who builds. So tomorrow morning, don't wait. Don't ask how you feel. Don't negotiate with your excuses. Rise. Stand. Move. Because you don't need permission. You don't need to feel perfect. You just need to show up. The man who waits for motivation will live his life reacting. The man who acts from duty will live his life creating. 9. You don't wake up early to do more. You wake up to live deeper. So if the Stoic man doesn't wait for the perfect feeling, and instead moves out of duty, then it's time to challenge another myth. You don't wake up early to crush more tasks. You wake up to live more consciously. That's the difference between a life that's busy and a life that's full. And too many men confuse motion with meaning. They rise at 5 a.m., stack their calendars, tick off their checklists. But deep down, they're still scattered. Still empty. Still unsure if anything they're doing actually matters. Because the point of rising early was never about productivity for its own sake. It was always about presence. About depth. About reclaiming a part of your soul before the world grabs it. It's about getting one step ahead of the noise, not to do more, but to be more. More aligned. More awake. More human. The Stoics knew this. They didn't fill their mornings with errands and obligations. They used that sacred space to center themselves, to reflect, to question, to clarify who they were before the world tried to tell them who they should be. You don't need 10 habits in the morning. You don't need a color-coded schedule. What you need is a moment. One real moment. To breathe, to write, to think, to feel the weight of being alive, and carry that into everything else you do. Because when your morning starts from intention, not impulse, everything changes. Your conversations become clearer. Your reactions become calmer. Your mind becomes sharper. And your presence becomes stronger. Suddenly, you're not just checking the box. You're not just doing things because someone said it's what high performers do. You're awake in your life, not just awake in your body. That's why rising early matters. Not because it makes you a machine, but because it gives you space to be a man. A man who chooses rather than reacts. A man who feels rather than numbs. A man who slows down just long enough to live deliberately before he goes out to lead decisively. Don't fall into the trap of mistaking busyness for purpose. You're not here to chase more. You're here to live deeper. And that begins with one quiet decision, to rise, not just out of bed, but into yourself. So tomorrow, don't just wake up earlier. Wake up clearer. Wake up slower. Wake up with presence, and do just one thing that reminds you this moment is yours. Write one honest sentence. Read one passage that challenges your mind. Sit in silence until the noise inside quiets down. You don't need more tasks. You need more truth. And sometimes that truth shows up, not in the rush to do, but in the power to be still. Wake early. Not to race, but to return. 10. Every morning is a new beginning. But only if you're awake enough to claim it. So if waking up early isn't about doing more, but about living deeper, then here's the truth that brings it all together. Every single morning is a reset button. A chance to start again. But only if you're awake enough to realize it. This isn't poetic. It's practical. It's raw. Because no matter how disciplined you were yesterday, or how far you fell short, when the sun rises again, so do you. And that's the beauty most men miss. They think it's too late. Too late to turn things around. Too late to get back on track. Too late to change the trajectory of their life. But here's what the Stoics understood. Yesterday doesn't define you unless you carry it into today. That's what mornings are for. To let go. To wipe the slate. To choose again, consciously, clearly, courageously. It doesn't matter if you failed yesterday. It doesn't matter if you hit snooze 3 times, skipped your training, lost your temper, wasted your time. What matters is what you choose now. What matters is whether you let that failure become identity or you let it become fuel. Because regret can drown you or refine you. The difference lies in what you do this morning. Most men don't need more time. They need a new starting point. And the truth is, they've had it all along, they just haven't been paying attention. It's the moment your alarm goes off. It's the breath you take before your feet hit the floor. It's that quiet voice that says, today can be different if you're willing to be. You are not chained to your past. You are not stuck in yesterday's mindset. You are not doomed to repeat what you regret. But only if you choose differently. Only if you stop carrying your excuses like armor. Only if you stop making your failures sacred. Let them go. Use them. Stand on them. And walk forward. Because when you meet the morning with full presence, when you show up not just out of obligation, but out of ownership, everything changes. You start building momentum. Not fake motivation, but real, earned momentum. The kind that stacks, deepens, compounds. And the more mornings you reclaim, the stronger your identity becomes. Until you're not waking up as the man who's trying to be better. You're waking up as the man who is better. Not perfect, but consistent, centered, rooted. And that kind of man, he doesn't chase inspiration anymore. He wakes up and creates it. So don't let this next morning pass by like all the others. Don't wake up and slip back into memory. Wake up and walk into mastery. Because every morning is a new beginning. But only if you're awake enough to claim it.